Hello and welcome. This is a video, or it's the first part of a series of videos about the relationship between Jamaican music and the punk and later post-punk movements. We'll be touching at a distance, of course, on Joy Division, but the story's wider than just them. So this is a three-part series. In the first part, there'll be a potted history of Jamaican music. Now, if you want to go deep into that history, I can really recommend Lloyd Bradley's excellent book, Bass Culture. It's my primary source for a lot of this video, but I've loved the music itself for decades. In the second part, I'll be covering how the punk and Jamaican cultures interacted. A lot of the musicians that came up during the punk revolution were highly influenced by not only the music but the rebel attitude of reggae music. There was a kinship between the two. And in the third part, I'll be talking about the more lasting musical influence that Jamaican music had, particularly on post-punk. During the post-punk era, musicians borrowed techniques and approaches that weren't always confined to just copying that distinctive rhythmic feel. Dub in particular was maybe the most high-profile avant-garde music of the 1970s. It was experimental, and to reach that point, the music went through rapid evolution, starting in around 1960. So to understand reggae and its relationship to Britain, we need to cover some of Jamaican history. The relationship between Britain and Jamaica is long, bloody and complicated. Spain first ruled it and Britain conquered it, taking over the slaves that Spain had imported. But of course the Spanish weren't the only ones involved in the slave trade. Cities like Bristol in Britain were built on the backs of transatlantic slaves. When the British were exporting human cargo of their own, a lot of the times it was to Jamaica. They needed cheap labour. Jamaica's rebel tradition goes deep though. They were the Maroons, freed or escaped slaves who occupied territories in the interior of the island. Jamaica was also home to the most slave rebellions in the Caribbean. The British met these rebellions with brutality. Slavery was eventually replaced with a very strict class system. The social problems that the island has are very much as a result of slavery and this class system. Now there's a side note here. Out of many we are one is an often forgotten motto of Jamaica. It's not a country only made up of the majority West African black and their white oppressors. There was, from the 19th century onwards, 2 or 3% each of Chinese and Indian immigrant workers who'd come in. The majority of the West African slaves had been freed, but there still was that need for cheap labour. The Asian population came in as indentured labour, which is the nearest thing you can get to slavery. But once they were emancipated, they were permitted as citizens to open businesses. And effectively, Jamaica ended up with a caste system that people with lighter colour skins had a lot more privilege. By 1962, the Chinese population owned 90% of the grocery stores in the country, and many entrepreneurs used that retail experience to move into record production, pressing and sales. Dub innovator Herman Chin is just one example. The Indian immigrants as well had an outsized influence on the culture. For a start, they brought a holy plant, ganja. They brought the word too. Rastafarians sometimes call it Kali, after the Hindu goddess. The Rastafarians also took veganism and abstention from alcohol from Indian tradition. But Rastafarianism's more than just those things, more than these trappings. It's often thought of as a religion, but it's not. It's a political philosophy. It's primarily a pan-African movement aimed at uniting the people wrenched apart by slavery. It's a way of taking back power. They believed that they had their own messiah, the Emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie. When Selassie finally visited Jamaica in 1966, he was taken aback by the adulation the Rastas placed in him. The Jamaican government was shocked as well by just how many Rastafarians there were and how many had come out to see him. Before that though, the island and its people had gained independence in 1962. Now, emancipation from being a colony was the spark. It was really the spark that set the Jamaican music scene alight. Central to Jamaican music is this feeling of freedom, and nowhere else is that truer than in the sound system. Sound systems are integral to Jamaican culture. They're portable parties which started up in the 1950s, mainly playing American R&B records. But by the 1960s, they were exclusively playing Jamaican records. Now the classic setup is turntables, amps, records, and a lot of speakers. There's a DJ, one with a microphone. He would introduce the records, hype the crowd, sometimes sing and chat, basically rapping. Profits were made on refreshments, but it was the freshest of sounds that got the customers. It was simple. The person with the best parties made the most money. Many sound system owners went on to be record producers and label owners. The deep knowledge that they got from seeing what their audience reacted to on a Friday and Saturday night really let the music evolve rapidly. Jamaican sound systems set the scene for hip-hop's block parties and a whole rave generation with its million subgenres. Sound systems were the essence of Jamaica. Dancing in humidity, jerk chicken, ginger beer and deep, deep bass. But this party life wasn't all of the picture. This was also a period when Jamaicans left for lives in colder countries. A lot of them left for America, many more went to wet, windy Britain. Between 1948 and 1971, there was a steady stream of immigrants into Britain from Jamaica and other Caribbean islands. This was the Windrush generation. They brought their own culture with them, which slowly and surely merged with British culture. This included music like calypso, which had a similar lopsided rhythmic feel to what later became known as ska. That and the Jamaican mento music, Jamaican folk music, mento blended with the jazz sounds which were coming out of America. And all this was mixed up by band leaders and record producers. So there was kind of a new fusion music which was being developed by record producers, songwriters and musicians on the island. In England, house parties had become a fixture, particularly on the London scene, and just occasionally white people would visit. This was a time when black and white people didn't integrate so much, except on the very fringes on society, but that would change with new housing developments. Slum clearances didn't just happen in Manchester, they happened all over the UK. What this meant was that working class white kids and black kids started to grow up together. They were put into housing, which was housing projects, the Americans would know them, near to each other. Now, there's an accepted truth in Britain that the working class are inherently racist and that most middle class people are immune from racism, and history doesn't really bear that out. What actually happened was kids of different races grew up with each other. They became friends, and over time that helped the world become less racist. None of this, of course, understates the prejudice which was faced day to day by the immigrant population, kids and adults alike. But most reports of racism in schools at that time point to presumably middle class teachers being the instigators, or at least the ones which allowed racist bullying to happen. Now, what could be called a form of reggae, or at least proto-reggae, first hit the British charts in the 1960s. It was the first major crossover hit, My Boy Lollipop by Millie. It wasn't really a Jamaican record though. Apart from the guitarist and arranger Ernest Ranglin, the musicians on the record weren't Jamaican. They'd have the feel explained to them, but they didn't have the feeling inside of them. Still, it was very much a crossover hit, and it sold 7 million copies worldwide. The record was released on Island Records. Now, the owner of Island Records, Chris Blackwell, was a white Jamaican with money to burn from a family fortune made in rum. Blackwell, like most of his countrymen, black and white, had been taught as a child to fear the Rasta man with his wild dreadlocks and uncivilized ways. Rastas were boogeymen of the era. But he had his eyes opened when a group of Rastafarians saved his life. A fishing trip he'd gone on alone almost killed him. He was nursed back from serious dehydration, sunburn and exhaustion. The dreadlock men had given him a place to rest, good, natural food. He owed them his life. He pledged to do what he could to elevate the public image of a Rastafarian. About 10 years later, his label put out a lot of the most famous reggae albums and played a big part in the career of Bob Marley and of course the profile of Rastafarianism and reggae worldwide. But we'll be coming to all that later on. In the meantime, Blackwell found there was a lot of money to be found repressing Jamaican hits for the UK market, and he worked tirelessly promoting them. One offshoot of the label was Trojan Records, and now this is a label that become truly iconic with a certain breed of working class youth. This is ska. A lot of what was happening on the island was a lot higher energy than My Boy Lollipop. Short songs, high tempos, noisy music. Back in the UK, young mods, scooter boys, supplemented their American soul with ska and bluebeat. Ska became the soundtrack of the skinhead movement over the next few years. Those working class black and white kids who grew up together influenced each other to make a new culture, but the seed was Jamaican. Early skinhead fashions were taken directly from Jamaican and black British street fashion of the day, the so-called rude boys. Bomber jackets, trench coats, Levi jeans, Fred Perry shirts. Bernard Sumner and Pete Hook will have both been exposed to Jamaican music and culture earlier on. They were teenage Suedeheads, neat cropped little bother boys who would have listened to ska and soul, amongst other things. But the Salford lads were generally music fans. This was just a phase they kind of drifted through. Now, there were big hits at the time. Liquidator by the Harry J All-Stars hit number 9 in the UK charts in November 1969. It became part of British culture. Chelsea, Wolverhampton Wanderers, West Bromwich Albion and St Johnstone all claim to have been the first to use it as their walking on music. Another example is Return of Django by the Upsetters. That got to number 5 in the charts at a time when records really sold. We'll be coming back to Lee Perry and his Upsetters in the next 2 parts of the series. Jamaican music was the pop music of a big section of the working class at that time, whether it was ska such as Prince Buster or later rock steady and reggae. Jamaican music was always changing, and white British youth were usually listening to styles that were considered old on the island. Across Britain there were musicians who'd go on to be punk and post-punk musicians who were getting into reggae. There was John Lydon in Finsbury Park, for instance. There were the Ruts nearby. There was Jerry Dammers, a public schoolboy in Coventry. Marquis Smith, the Slits, Ian Curtis, as we'll come to later. The feeling of the music was embedded in British culture, that stress on the offbeat, chicka-boom chick, that kind of thing. But Jamaican music was changing. Okay, so that's the end of the first part of this series. I'll be putting up the next part in the next couple of days, or just after the weekend, I think. Thanks for watching. First of all, do take care, look after yourselves, like and subscribe. See you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.